videos. It's my pleasure to welcome you to a Center for Palestine Studies event. Last summer, when the center was still a gleam in our eyes, I had the occasion to call Dan Walsh, our speaker today, because he had a well-known large collection of Palestinian posters. And his first reaction and his consistent reaction has been that his posters were our posters, that what was available to him, what he put up, what he curated and gathered together was something that was completely available for the use of the center as it grew. And in fact, his poster collection, which is called the Palestine Poster Project Archives, technically, you can find as one of the original links on the center website. One of the original resources that we put up, and it's part of what we hope is a growing list of scholarly resources for work on Palestine and Palestinians. But it's a very distinctive source, a very distinctive archive, and that's what he's come to talk to us about today. He is a graduate student at Georgetown University in the Center for the Study of Contemporary Arab Society, and he's also an affiliate of the Center for Palestine Studies at Columbia. He came today with hard copy. In addition to all this wired technology, he came with a gift to the university, specifically to the library. Our Middle East librarian, Kokab Shabaro, has the actual hard copies here. This nice gift of a selection of interesting, important posters is maybe the beginning of something big in terms of the hard copies being available for consultation at the library. He also, today, in conjunction with the center, has put up an archive of 100 what he calls iconic posters. And this is under the title One Archive, One Narrative. This went up, and if you look on the front page, the home page of the center website, you will see the link to this slideshow of 100 very remarkably beautiful posters and interesting posters with some narration. His own archive, the mother archive, so to speak, has in excess of 4,000 posters at this point, and continues to grow every day. We get notifications of new acquisitions and new growth. His talk today is cobbled together from a number of digital sources. We had a slight technical glitch, but I think you say you have 2 out of 3 of the sources.
Yeah, I think we'll be covered.
And the talk is entitled, "A Pixel is Worth 1,000 Words."
Verbs.
Verbs. Dan Walsh. Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. And I have to begin with some acknowledgements. I have to thank the memory of Dr. Edward Said, who gave me my first grant for this work back about 25 years ago through the American Palestine Education Foundation. $3,500 to take a small collection of posters, Palestine posters, that I had collected as a Peace Corps volunteer in Morocco between 1974 and 1976. And the grant was for a slide projector and some trays and some photography to make the slides. And then I began this whole journey by going around to schools and social activist groups in Washington, D.C. and telling the story of Palestine through the posters of Palestine. And I also want to thank my academic advisor at Georgetown, Dr. Rochelle Davis, who was here a couple of weeks ago speaking, who's been very supportive of this and given me some leniency and encouraged me to look at the posters. Less as I had done for the last 25 years running my design company, Liberation Graphics, looking at them aesthetically and politically. At Georgetown, I've learned how to look at them anthropologically and ethnographically, which is a much deeper and much more interesting way to look at art. And basically, I'm going to move back and forth between 2 websites. This one, which is the actual exhibit of One Archive, One Narrative. I'm going to explain that in a minute, what the title means. and the website for the Palestine Poster Project Archives. So there are two parts to my thesis. One is the Palestine Poster Project Archive, which is the website, it has almost 4,000 posters, and my new curriculum, which is a link at that website. And and I also wanted to thank the artist at Zan Studio who put this together for me, Zan Studio in Ramallah. And I want to thank Dr. Eric Zakim, who's a professor of modern Hebrew and contemporary Israeli history at the University of Maryland, who encouraged me to incorporate the posters of Zionism into the Palestine Poster Project, and I'm going to explain why that's a really good idea, how it works. And he's also handles most of the Hebrew translations and contextualization of Zionist posters, roughly 1898 to the present for me. So I've covered the three. We're going to look at the new curriculum, we're going to look at one archive, one narrative, and the Palestine Poster Project Archive. And the main problem I'm trying to address with my thesis, this is the only reading I'm going to do here, is that there's an absence of an integrated, authentic curriculum of the early history of Palestine in American high school textbooks. I.e., if you go into as I did a survey of high schools in Washington, D.C., Montgomery County, Maryland, and Fairfax, Virginia, at the honors level and the international baccalaureate level, and I looked at all the high school textbooks that we use, all the curriculum, all the syllabi. In every one of these examples, in every one of these places, I don't know why that happened. Okay, there it is. In every one of those schools, when you go in to find out how the history of the Palestinian-Zionist conflict is being taught, you find that without exception, every single every single high school textbook that I looked at, and Montgomery County and Maryland and Fairfax County, Maryland are two of the top 6 counties in terms of income, the number of PhDs, the number of congressmen and senators, and Supreme Court justices, income. I think the average income in both places is over $150,000. And so they can buy any textbook they want, and they can have an international baccalaureate program of whatever level of prestige they want. In every single one of them, they start the discussion of the Palestinian-Zionist conflict on, anybody want to take a guess when that starts? What the date is for the discussion of the Palestinian?
1948.
1948. Everything happened in 1948. Everything happened, but more, specifically May 15, 1948. As the leading textbook in Montgomery County says, to sum up and to introduce the chapter on the Palestinian, often called the Arab-Israeli conflict, the lead sentence goes, in 1948, Israel declared its independence and the Arab countries invaded. That's the context for the discussion of the Palestinian-Zionist conflict. Time before that almost doesn't exist. And so what I found was that American high school students and teachers are really bogged down in the sense that the teachers don't know what to teach. They only have the curriculum, the official curriculum stuff that they have to teach. If you go into the classrooms, probably everybody maybe remembers this, the discussion around Palestine-Israel is very cramped. It's an uncomfortable place. It's not a comfort zone by any means. And so I tried to change that, and I tried to look at 3 things. I tried to address 3. Well, Eisner, I'm going to talk about where the study of Palestine and Zionism is in the American high school. And Eisner, who's the guru of American curriculum, said in a book he wrote in 1994 that there were 4 kinds of curriculum. There's the formal or official, which is what the state puts out as a model that teachers have to follow. There's the informal, which is what the teachers do with the formal curriculum. There's the hidden curriculum, which is stuff that gets taught that's not part of either the formal or informal. It can be part of a question a student asks or something that gets added into the curriculum, so we all learn about something that's not written. And then there's the null curriculum, that which is specifically not taught. Now, you can make the argument that the early history of Zionism and the origins of the Palestinian-Zionist conflict are not part of the null curriculum because nobody's deliberately not teaching them. In fact, there's one textbook in the Fairfax library that can be used where you actually can read about Dreyfus and the rise of European nationalism and the rise of anti-Semitism and the origins of German anti-Semitism and the Dreyfus affair and the whole struggle over assimilation and the emergence of Zionism. You can do that, but it's 472 pages earlier in a chapter under European nationalism. It's nowhere near the chapters having to do with the Palestinian Zionist conflict. So what I've tried to do with my with my new curriculum is to create a resource that teachers and students and increasingly the general public can use in order to look at the early years of the Palestinian Zionist conflict, specifically August 21st, 1897 up to May 14th, 1948. You'll find some references broken up, fractured, nuanced, perhaps, I think, anemic in some of the textbooks, but there is nothing that actually follows an arc from Theodor Herzl and the First Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897, where Zionism actually launched itself onto the world stage, on up to today. So that's the object of my new curriculum, is to make it possible for an American high school student who doesn't come from any ethnic or political background and who wants to learn about the issue in its authenticity, that he or she can go to a place and learn about it in toto. The second thing was that I felt that something was needed to encourage that kind of analysis. And the poster, I find, among the printed materials on the issue, you know, there's books, there's films, there's essays and lectures, and there's a whole series of printed materials and published materials on the Palestinian Zionist conflict. But I felt that there was nothing that actually engaged the students in what the National Council on Social Sciences calls civic competence, because the actual, if you attend any of these teachers' conferences, especially curriculum development, progressive curriculum development conferences, the object of a progressive curriculum is not to teach us, you know, the minutia of this battle or that person, or, you know, to get us to spell the name of some individual correctly. It's actually civic competence. Civic competence is the can I get that to go off so that you don't have to look at civic competence, the ability of the students to either while they're in the class or at home or after they graduate to actually carry on a discourse about the subjects they discussed in class. And there's not a single curriculum or syllabi or outline or anything that I looked at in any of the schools that I visited and presented at that actually teaches or gears its work towards civic competence. Students are still pretty much befuddled, and the subject of Palestinian nationalism and political Zionism continues to be almost off limits, to be something that people either want to get through quickly. They sense that they have a great many questions, but it's not something that teachers feel particularly competent about. And so the curriculum in that whole arena is very stale and hasn't really been looked at for, I would say, 40 years. It certainly hasn't been revitalized in 40 years. So the question was, how do we change things? So I use the poster, and when I go into the classrooms, the first thing I do is I have I have a PowerPoint presentation, but I can't get it to work here today. But I have a PowerPoint presentation I send in advance, plus the website. The students and the teachers are allowed to look at it and encouraged to look at it. And basically what happens when I go into the classroom is I put up the posters and I ask a simple question. Trying to change the dynamic, I say to the students, what do you see in this poster? And what happens with that is the teacher and me, the resource, I'm generally called the resource person or the outside resource person. We stand aside and we just listen, and a really interesting thing happens. The students really take control of the classroom. And it's a new way to teach the history of the Palestinian Zionist conflict, basically by having the teachers listen and answer questions. Because they go through and they say, what do you see in that poster? And there's a whole series of things. Students, some of the questions are ridiculous and some of the things that don't make sense. But in terms of what's called practical anthropology, the students are asking questions and they begin to talk and argue and debate the issues among themselves. And by the time I'm a half an hour into the classroom, we've gone through maybe 6 or 8 posters. And generally, I learned something in the process. And that changes the dynamic, because that's actually, we actually then take the classroom of American high school students, and probably for the first time in their lives, they're talking about Palestinian nationalism, they're talking about pan-Arabism, they're talking about anti-Semitism, they're actually asking questions about Zionism and Theodor Herzl. So it changes the dynamic because people are actually practicing for civic competence. So I think that that's one of the things that the Palestine poster does uniquely. It does it better or differently, or for maybe in complete contravention to books and lesson plans and literature and lectures. It actually allows for the origination of the discourse to be altered, and to say, rather than the teacher to be lecturing, actually teachers then become resource people and answer questions. because what the questions do is they allow the students to establish their own comfort zone. So by the time I come back 2 or maybe 4 weeks later to do a follow-up, there's a completely different dynamic going on in the class. To a teacher, to a single one in all the districts, Maryland, the district, and Maryland, say that the curriculum as I put forward is unique and completely different from any other that they've used to teach what they call the Middle East or the Arab-Israeli conflict, or however that school defines the issue. By altering the locus of discussion and allowing the students to actually drive the discussion, you get a completely different dynamic. And I'm going to go along, and every 10 minutes or so, when I feel I've gotten to the end of the section, I'm going to encourage people to ask questions as we go along, rather than to save them to the end, because there might be some people who can't stay or whatever, so, and you may not remember them. So if you have questions, feel free to shout out, raise your hand, or whatever. I'd like to address them in the context of the segment. So are there any questions about my thesis and why I put it together the way I did?
I have a question. Can you tolerate there being no light, or do you want to do that or not?
Oh, we can try that. And the posters will come up better if we do.
Can you need to be able to see something?
No, I don't need that. I just want to be able to move back and forth between that. Okay, so
okay.
So yeah, it actually does look better. So very briefly about this website. It's called One Archive, One Narrative, because what I found out was that when I started to put together the new curriculum, there's 12 lesson plans, and I had roughly 4 or 5 posters per lesson plan. Well, as I went around to the different schools, the teachers kept saying, well, are there more posters? Are there additional posters? Do you have posters on the Balfour Declaration? Do you have posters on Theodore Herzl? Do you have these other posters? Because there were elements within their curriculum that they had to teach for reasons I don't understand. Every single American school district I visited, and for all I know, every single American school district in the country teaches the Balfour Declaration. I don't know why. It's not really a declaration. It was a letter passed from a king to a cabinet member privately, and it wasn't even announced in Palestine, where it was afraid it would cause riots. So there's nothing declarative about the Balfour Declaration, but it's part of the formal curriculum in all the districts, and teachers have to teach about the Balfour Declaration. And I mean, it's not a really important part of understanding, the Palestinian Zionist conflict, but it's in there, and there doesn't seem to be anything you can do about it. So teachers started to ask for more posters, and so what I did is I put together a website where I could put the other posters that I had. You want to leave mine?
Well,
oh, he can't.
yeah.
Okay.
He went in the dark.
Okay. So, you went in the dark. Okay, sure. So, so what I learned was that there were a great many posters, and as the teachers asked for them, the Palestine Poster Project Archive part of this, which we'll go to, which is right here. I think I can just click on this, and that makes it happen. Yeah. Okay. This is the website. There are almost 4,000 posters on that. That actually grew, and I started putting up posters, and hundreds and hundreds. I should tell you that when I was a Peace Corps, I should have said this earlier on. When I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Morocco, 74 to 76, I was stationed in what was then a small suburb outside of Marrakesh. It's now part of Marrakesh proper. And I was teaching in Arabic 8 hours a day, and I had been plunked on it. I didn't have any background in Arabic, and so the Peace Corps assigned me a tutor in the morning who came to my house before I went to school, and a tutor at nighttime. So I was studying 2 to 4 hours of Arabic a day for 2 years, and I was generally just one day ahead of my students in terms of using the terminology for the curriculum to teach the classes. And it was a lot of work. It wasn't something I was supposed to study French. That was what the Peace Corps had said I was going to be studying. Here I was studying this language. I had no background in it. And after about 6 months, I was, not burnt out, but it was a tedious thing. One of the tutors said to me, you know what, you should have some fun with this. Take your dictionary, you're going to Casablanca next week, translate some posters. So when I got in the buses, stopped to check the oil or let people on and off, and there was a break, I would get out, and I would walk along, and I would translate the posters, or try to translate the posters. Generally, the Moroccans who came up around me, who were illiterate in Arabic, they wanted me to tell them what the posters said. And so this very interesting dynamic developed. I got taken home to lots of really interesting meals. And generally somebody would step forward and help me out, and we'd translate a poster. And this went on for some time. And one day I translated a poster that said Palestine. And I didn't know it said Palestine because my limited Arabic was triliteral, and this had 4 consonants, and what did that mean? And it was a Palestine poster. and it was in Rabat, and it was in front of the PLO mission, which I didn't know anything about either. A guy came out, saw me struggling with the translation, said, "Do you want a copy of the poster?" I hadn't even thought that this poster, which was glued to the paper, actually was a piece of paper somewhere. It started life as a, and I got taken into a room, given a couple of hundred posters, and that's how that started. And I now have the largest archives in the world. And it's roughly 4,000 posters. There's roughly 4,000 here, but only 2,000 of the posters that I have in my basement are online, because the other 2,000 that are happening here are things that are either been sent to me on the internet, or they're actual posters that have taken place now. People, you know, the Palestine poster has the Palestine poster, not the Palestinian poster, but the poster of Palestine started around 1898. Around 1890, with French and Italian travel companies, the precursors of Wagon Leeds and Société Nationale de Chemin de Fer, the tourism companies, of taking religious travelers to Palestine to visit the holy sites. So the earliest Palestine poster, which is up here, I'll get to it in a minute, 1898, comes from tourism. In 1897, the Zionists had their first Zionist Congress. They had the Basel program, one step of which was to organize world support for Zionism and to use all means of promotion to reach people. So they did, Zionists published books, they did movies, and they adopted posters. So you can't say that the European tourism industry originated the genre. The Zionists in 1897 recognized that they had to publicize their issue, and about 1910 they started producing posters in serious numbers, and they produced Palestine posters. From 1897 on up to 1948, almost every poster published by a Zionist publisher said Palestine, visit Palestine, invest in Palestine, travel to Palestine, emigrate to Palestine. So the Palestine genre was given a great shot in the arm by early Zionism. May 14, 1948, the Palestine poster as we know it, and as we'll see it in the show, ceased to exist because Zionist Palestine no longer existed, historical Palestine ceased to exist, and Israel came into existence, and I'll show you some posters in a few minutes where the same printer within a month of time changed the poster from Visit Palestine to Visit Israel. And so the Palestine poster sort of went dormant from about 1898, 1940, so 1898 we'd say it was born, it flourishes, and we'll see some great posters done by Zionist poster artists in that 50-year period. 1948, with the War of Independence, there's a few Palestine posters published by some, mostly Egypt, Arab country publishers, but it doesn't exist really as an important genre until after the Battle of AlKharama in March of 1968, when the Palestinians and the Israelis went at each other at the Battle of Karama. Everybody claimed victory, but one of the main outcomes of the Battle of Karama was that the Palestinians began to take seriously the idea of international solidarity, information production and dissemination, and one of the vehicles that they adopted was the poster. And maybe I should go to, it's funny, I have a completely different web page here. And so I'm going to go to Fatah. I'll go down to Fatah and we'll just get a, let me see. There's over 400 posters in this genre now. Okay, so here we have a special collection of the posters of Fatah, which you can see in the early days they were mostly black and white. Many of them don't have logos, they're not signed, and they're basically works done on the run, thrown together. But artists came out of the woodwork. Palestinian, Arab, Muslim, and international artists came out of the woodwork and started to contribute artwork. And Fatah took the poster very seriously and used it for all kinds of things. In fact, the only book written on the Palestinian published poster, called the Palestinian Poster by Shafiq Redwan, is actually a doctoral dissertation on this early period when the Palestinians were just beginning to comprehend the use of the poster as a way to generate solidarity and also as a way to tell a story and to counter even internal Palestinian Palestinians talking to one another. Many of these early posters are done only in Arabic. So, like this one here by Nabil Naba. which is in the Library of Congress. Can I get that to go? You know, it doesn't have a logo. It's just down here. This, you can't read this program, but it says Munazama Tahrir Palestiniya in Arabic. And this poster, the original, is in both the Library of Congress permanent collection, which I've tried to get them to find. They can't find the poster, so that we can shoot a better JPEG of it. It's also in one of the earliest important books about poster art, contemporary poster art, called Prop Art by Gary Yanker. So I'm going to go back to, I know this thing doesn't let me go back. I'm going to go back to special collections, scroll down again, and come back to Feather. So let me stay on that. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to scroll down just so you can see, because this page has everything on one page. Scroll down just so you can see how, like today, you know, like, let's go. You know, today the PLO has gone to the music. I think even in '86, using Photoshop and, you know, cutting edge web-based graphics and all kinds of slick advertising tools and resources. And so in 1968, this is the arc. It's important to establish roughly 1890, the European tourism creates the genre, the first Palestine posters. Zionism in 1897 with its first Congress adopts the poster as a serious resource, and for 50 years creates Palestine posters. That ends in 1948. There's a hiatus. 1968, the Battle of AlKharama. The PLO adopts the poster as a serious communications resource, and shortly after that, almost like within a year, the international art community gets involved in that, which explains the Four Wellsprings. All of these posters, the 4,000 that are here, the 4,000 that are still in my basement, and the thousands that are being created all around the world on Palestine right now, they all come from Four Wellsprings: Israeli and Zionist artists and agencies, Palestinian nationalist artists and agencies, Muslim and Arab artists and agencies, and international artists and agencies. So you can put all the posters that are done here in one of those four categories. And the reason why I chose not to call this the Palestinian Poster Project Archives is that many of the posters are not done by Palestinians. And in fact, so the Palestinian nationalist Wellspring is only one of four, and it's not even the largest, not yet anyway. So if you, some of the concern was that by putting these archives together, I was basically equating them, or you know, there's the whole issue of normalization now within the Palestinian national discourse. And I'm not suggesting that these posters are equal, or that they're all the same, or that some are better than the others, or whatever. What I'm saying is that for an American high school student to try to understand the origins of the Palestinian Zionist conflict, and to get a grasp on it, and to be civically competent, to be able to discuss with teachers and their neighbors and other people the arc of history, they have to basically have access to the same history that Palestinians and Israelis do. They have to be able to argue the issue the same way Palestinian nationalists and political Zionists do. And I found that the only way to do that was to present all the posters. The Zionists provided some of the early posters, which gives us really a window into Zionist psychology and early Zionist history. And then, starting in 1968, the Palestinians play an increasingly important role in fleshing out the details of that history. So, are there any questions at this point?
Could you show us a map of Palestine in 1897?
Yes. Well, 1898.
1898?
1898, yeah. If I can figure out, Miriam showed me how to do this. Okay, yeah. All right, so. This is not one. Okay. So. Where's my little slide here? So weird. I'm left-handed and I'm using a right-handed mouse. Here's the oldest, the earliest poster in the archives to date. There are two versions. this one here. This is published by. Is that, okay, and this is in the slideshow as well. This is published by Paris, Lyon, Mediterranean Tour Lines, which is a precursor of the modern French SNCF, which is the French National Rail Service. And what you could do when you do what the PLM company was doing, they were saying, get on a train in Paris, and you'll go to Lyon and Marseille, and you'll get on a boat, and we'll take you to Palestine, and you can visit the holy places. So this is the oldest one. There's another
Not
version.
the entire territory.
Sorry?
It's not the entire territory that would appear on a map, though. That's what
He asked for a map.
Oh, did you ask? I'm sorry.
I asked for a map.
Oh yes, I thought you asked to see the oldest.
Appeared in 1898.
I don't know. Okay, well there's a special collection in here called Maps. So it's not comprehensive, but let's go to that. Okay. So there's a map for from 1710, and this one here, Mars, Mediterranean Mars, is I think it's from 1580. The date's in there somewhere, but there's a whole there is actually a map website, a Palestine Map website has all kinds of maps. This is just these are just the ones that have been posterized. So did I answer your question?
No.
Could you ask it again? Let me give me another try.
Could you show us a map of Palestine as it existed in 1898?
No, I don't have that.
What is Palestine as it appeared in 1898?
Yeah, I don't have that.
What would the
I don't have that.
territory encompass?
Well, I mean, okay, so there's 109 maps at this website. Most of them are in poster form, and they're a product of modern lithography. So,
But there was a territory of Palestine that encompassed Jordan.
was there another question? Did somebody else have another question?
Let's continue.
Yeah.
Do you have any posters from the United Nations?
There's a whole special collection in here on United Nations posters. Yeah. Okay, so any other questions? And okay, so I'm going to shift now from the I'm going to actually go back to that for a second just to wrap that up if I can get into that. Okay, so what you do in this, it's 100 posters. It has 2 web links. One takes you to the website, and another one takes you to the Center for Palestine Studies website. And up there, if you click on the number, it will take you to that poster's page in the website. So if you want more detailed information or any wiki links, or if it's part of, if that artist has a special collection, or if it's part of a, you can get the more complete data for that poster by clicking on that. And you can click on this button right here to go to the next poster. And you click on the return arrow to go back.
And this is what's on the website as of today.
This is the website as of today.
On the Columbia Center for Palestine Studies.
It's actually being debuted right now. This is the first time it's being seen. There's 100 posters. It's hopefully the first of many exhibits, online exhibits. I hope to actually have one for every special collection. There's been a lot of interest in having the posters used as screensavers and in classrooms and as exhibits. So we're going to try to format the entire 4,000 posters and however many it winds up into discrete and focused slideshows. Okay, all of these posters are available to students to download, journalists, wherever. There's no copyrights involved in any of these. Use of the JPEGs, and for most of them, if you click on, let's click on this one here. You go here. You can go almost for all the artists who have them. I've clicked directly to the artist's special collection, and you click on the poster. You can actually write to Juan Fuentes, the artist who did this. And if an artist is alive and has a website and an email and has sent it to me, I included it. So you, as the student or the journalist or the researcher, you can go and reach the artist directly. I mean, there's no, you don't have to write to me to get the artist's to get the artist information if it's available. Now I'm going to go, okay, so now we're going to stay here and just go through a couple of the special collections. There are 444 of them as of today. A special collection, I took a library science course 2 semesters ago. A special collection can be anything. It can have one thing in it, or it can have thousands of things. And I've organized these as special collections of artists, publishers, themes, and, well, artists, publishers, and themes, and sometimes events. And this will soon be broken out so that instead of 444 going through, you'll be able to say, I want to know about artists, and all the artists will be listed in it, publishers, and the themes will be broken out. So there'll only be 5 special collection categories with far fewer entries in them. And the change in the way the Palestine poster exists today as opposed to the way it existed coming into being is that from 1898 to 1948, early Zionism used the poster really effectively, and created what I consider to be one of the great unsung political poster genres of the 20th century. And here are just well, I mean, this is the Wellspring, but the early Zionists hired some of the most talented people. Many artists came out and did works in solidarity with Zionism. The Bezalel School in Jerusalem was one of the first places to teach contemporary poster design and typography and the principles of design in the Middle East. This is a work by I call him unidentified artist number 2 because he or she did 4 really important works, but I can't find the name because it wasn't considered important at the time for this artist to sign his or her work. But let's just stay here for a second. One of the things that early Zionism did with the poster was it had 4 objectives. It was to promote tourism to Palestine, to promote aliyah or emigration to Palestine, to promote investment, and to promote industry. So the Zionists organized exhibitions in the United States and all over Europe every year. And it was like a mini World's Fair. You could go to this exhibition. Some of them cost a few francs or Deutschmarks to get in, and they would have tents set up or mini factories, or they'd have cuisine from the area. You'd have people who had made the trip to Palestine to talk to people, to recruit new immigrants. And there's a whole series of Palestine exhibitions where you could go and you could buy handicrafts. You could do all kinds of. You could supposedly get a sense of what it was like to emigrate to Palestine through these exhibitions. And this is an example of 4. One is promoting. I think 2 are promoting industry. One is promoting aliyah, and the other one is an international Near East fair that was actually in Palestine. So the Zionists, the early Zionists, I want to go to Wellspring. I want to go back to the early Zionists. Basically created a genre that, for reasons I don't really understand, is not appreciated, is not promoted by either the Israeli government or any major American academies or institutions. Here's the website of the Central Zionist Archives in Jerusalem. It's a little clunky. It's not all that informative, but it only has 125 posters on it. But you have to click through like 4 or 5 different buttons to get to anything. Many of them don't have translations. Some of them do. And you can just get a sense of the talent that was mobilized to create this early genre of early Palestine posters. And I'm going to go back and see if I can get back. That from roughly 1897 to 1948. For a Zionist, one of the greatest things to be able to do is to say, I am a Palestinian. The rubric Palestinian was adopted by Zionists to identify those people who had gone to Palestine, made Aliyah, and committed themselves to Zionism. And David Ben-Gurion used to say, I'm a Palestinian. And he would explain that he would come to the United States and say, I'm a Palestinian, as a way of sort of embarrassing Jewish Americans who hadn't made Aliyah, that to be authentically Jewish and to be involved in the Jewish Renaissance, one had to make Aliyah. And so what I say in my thesis, and I have a 5-point definition up here in this section, is that a Palestine poster is, above all else, any poster from anywhere, for any language, on any reason, that has the word Palestine in it, in any language. So the early Zionist posters almost all had the word Palestine in them, or printed in Palestine, or whatever. So that established the genre. And by incorporating the poster art of early Zionism, Americans and American students, and I'm specifically focusing on high school students trying to grasp the issue. I'm not focusing on art galleries and collectors and other people who are also welcome to visit the site, but my site has a very specific demographic. They can see the posters that were actually used to teach the principles of Zionism to proto-Zionists, and by Zionist artists and published by Zionist publishers. And so the quality of that narrative is unsullied. There's no interpretation really involved on my part. I can just present the material and say, here's how Zionism saw the world, or saw its principles, or considered its objectives through its poster art starting in 1898. And I'm going to try to find for you here perhaps the most well-known, depending upon certainly the most talked about Palestine poster of the last 5 or 6 years. Well, it's designed by this artist, so I'll get to it through this way. Franz Krauss, who's considered the eminence grise of Zionist poster art. In Visit Palestine, and there's an entire subgenre within this that all have the same title, and they pretty well represent the tourism the tourism rubric of the Zionist posters, showing the earlier ones showed build industries and invest. This one here promotes mostly religious, but for purposes, if you read any of the documentation, for purposes of generating foreign currency, tourism, they were happy to have tourists from anywhere. And this poster has an interesting history. It was reprinted, it was originally printed in 1935 by the Jewish Agency for Tourism in Palestine. It says that on the poster. But in 1995, in the wake of the Oslo Accords and all of that, David Tartakova, who's the dean of Israeli graphic design. He won the Herzl Prize, the Israel Prize in 2005, and he's considered the leading graphic designer of Israel. He reprinted this poster. You can see Krauss's logo over here, and he reprinted it exactly as it was, and he reissued it. And he was surprised. I mean, we've had interesting conversations. I interviewed him last year in his house in the old city of Jaffa. And when he reissued it as a way of honoring Krauss and of sort of celebrating the Oslo Accords and the emerging peace environment that was happening. He had no idea that the Palestinians were going to see this poster and immediately appropriate it and basically adopt it as their own, because for the Palestinians, this poster here basically kicks the legs out from under a series of Zionist myths. That there was never a place called Palestine, there were never people living in Palestine, Palestine was a barren desert. So this poster is, at last count, being published by at least 12 underground Palestinian publishers, including in Gaza. And it sells like crazy. And it sold out. David Tartakova, who did the original press run, sold it through the Israel Museum, where it was a blockbuster. It sold like crazy. Hardly any tourists. They said that for the months that it was available, hardly anybody left the Israel Museum without buying a copy. And so there's a deep irony in here, in that posters published by Zionism in 1935 carried a very different message and were received very differently than they were when they were republished in 1995. And so this poster has become sort of like a, is a product of early Zionism, but has become a sort of a standard in Palestinian refugee camps and Palestinian homes, because for the Palestinians, it embodies the country. It challenges some central Zionist claims to the barrenness of the land and the fact that there never was a Palestine. And there are several, and so sorry, yeah, sure.
On this poster, no matter what, like even this poster, you can say that desertification of Palestine.
The what?
I call it desertification, make it desert Palestine.
Are you saying desertification?
Yeah.
Meaning as in there being a desert?
Yeah, because you take it out, you see only one tree, all the area beyond the buildings.
The trees are cypress trees there.
Well, there's a cypress tree right here, and there's gardens, there's lush gardens.
Yeah,
and
one tree, yeah.
No, but these are the trees in there, they're cypress trees, in the garden.
There's cypress trees here, there's a garden, there's mountains.
This is the, but beyond the houses and so on.
So your point was that your point that this poster points out that Palestine was a desert?
Well, the culture of the period of Zionism, that Palestine is a desert, nobody's there. There are holy places.
Well,
the
let's,
holy places, there are.
well, let's look. You raise a good point. Let's look at a couple of the other posters from that period that do the same thing, that basically touch on the same subject. And here's a poster, done by Zeev Rabban, who's also one of the great early poster artists of Come to Palestine, published by the Jewish Agency for Tourism in Palestine. And there you see a very different Palestine from the one that's spoken about, as a desert and land for people, This is not the Palestine that most Zionists were saying existed when they tried to recruit people and say the land is empty, there's nobody there, come and bring it to life. This is a very lush and verdant and populated place.
Oh, you don't see people here. You see, that is the same.
Okay, all right, okay. So you're not happy with that one? That one works for you to okay. I'm not sure that any one poster can deal with all the mythologies or all the this, by the way, copies of all of these are, if you want to see the originals, the Library of Congress has all of these, as well as online. So here's another one, Visit Palestine. And basically what I'm saying is that in terms of the class discussion taking place, people saying Visit Palestine, is what did they see? Were Zionists promoting in their posters a vision of Palestine or an image of Palestine that was consistent with, say, what they were in their publications or their lectures or their recruiting standards? Or were the posters, which were meant for tourism, showing a completely different Palestine? I mean, who would want to go to like a place that was just barren and dry? I understand why they did it. In fact, there are accounts, I'm going to put them online, you can read the accounts of the discussions that went into choosing the iconography and the problems that it might raise. So again, it's an example of a poster done in the 1920s and 30s that runs counter to the narrative of either what Zionism had to say about, say, today, or what it said it was saying in the 20s and 30s. That make sense to you?
Let me say something. Like, look here. Well, what is the grape and the pomegranate?
The grape and the pomegranate, I think there are...
biblical.
Yeah, they're biblical. Yeah, let's take your question one more.
I see the poem. They have a motive to say that there is life, there is water you can drink. You are not going to starve there. But still, the image is a biblical, what's called biblical Palestine with no people. So this is...
Well, here's another one with no people. It's actually another poster that's being remixed over and over again. It was just used as a poster for, I think his name is Eyal Sabal, called the Orange Clockwork. This was redone, and I have the poster in here. Again, Visit Palestine, See Ancient Beauty Revived. This served a dual purpose of both recruiting Zionists and working as a tourism poster. People to come and see a place that was
This
being.
is 1939. What year is this? I guess.
This one
This is my
was
guess.
1935, circa
You
1935.
see, I have some study about this, and this is where they began to, now the claim is in this period, we brought development. We made the desert blooming. The agriculture.
There is that. Well, there is
Those
that.
are the years.
Well, there is that whole argument, and that we can certainly go and look into that. But the point is that I want to talk about the poster. I want to talk about how the poster was used, not specifically for one thing. Here's an example of the Haifa 1956 to 1958, the 10th anniversary of Israel's independence, celebrating. The central feature is a Palestinian Debki dancing troupe. So as a way to promote tourism, Israel was even willing, the Zionists at the time were even willing to use Arab culture, promote Arab culture as a way to promote, which I'm not going to get into with the rightness and wrongness of that. I'm only going to talk about what. Say that again?
1958, one of the Israeli claims. I'm Palestinian, grew up so in the Israeli curriculum, so I know the Hebrew, the language, the poster. So 1958 is 10 years. And what the Israeli claim that we made everybody happy. We brought our disparate people back home, and the Arabs are developed now. They love us, they have their folklore, they have their language, we give them school and everything. And especially in 1958, this was planned and important. This is why the big, this is under military rule, you see. At this time you have military rule, I can't go to my school without a permit as a 11 years old boy. See? My father can go to work. So we are celebrating the folklore.
Well, okay. So the point that I was trying to make was that in the Zionist oeuvre and the Zionist genre, there's basically a period where the poster was used to recruit new Zionists, to promote Aliyah, to promote tourism, and to promote investment. After 1948, things changed. Still promoting tourism, still promoting all the other elements, but using a different palette and a different iconography. One that now includes Palestinians in a commercially positive way. Okay, that was the only point that I was trying to make.
Well, I appreciate your work and that you put it all in one narrative, and I say that because I have to leave in 2 minutes. I think it's a great work that you put it all together. I think no matter what the side, no matter how they do it, it shows that some of the real cases of Palestine. This is the positive things about it. I agree.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move now to Hilmi Tooney. We've talked about some of the early Zionist artists like Krauss and Zebra Bond. One of the other genres that's really interesting to look at is one of the Wellsprings is Arab and Muslim artists. And so, in the early days of Zionism, many artists, Czech, Bulgarian, French, Italian, Spanish, came either commercially or out of solidarity with Zionism and produced posters in support of Israel and Zionism, promoting the 4 goals I just mentioned: tourism, investment, Aliyah, and trade. The same thing happens after 1968 relative to Palestinian solidarity, where artists from around the world begin to produce posters in solidarity with Palestinian nationals. Something that didn't exist before March 1968 and the Battle of AlKharama. And part of the reason why that is probably worth mentioning, is that at the Battle of AlKharama, which was supposed to be a cakewalk for the Israelis had initially planned to walk in, spend 4 hours decapitating the Palestinian political leadership in the refugee camp of the same name next to the town, AlKharama. But it was in Jordan, because after the 1967 war, a lot of the Palestinian guerrillas had bled back over the border out of the West Bank into Jordan, and they were congregating in the refugee camps licking their wounds because the Israelis had trounced Syria, Egypt, Jordan in the war. And so the Fatah leadership kept doing raids into Israel, crossing over the border, blowing up bridges and stuff, and the Israelis said, we don't need to tolerate this. We're going to send in a couple of battalions and we're going to take care of this problem. So And there's a couple of really interesting accounts online, including at Wikipedia. And so, but the problem was that the Israelis had a good relationship with Jordan. And they didn't want, they had to go into Jordan and they had to do a lot of shooting and breaking things up, but they didn't want to, they wanted the King Hussein to understand, look, this isn't about you. We don't want to hurt any Jordanians. We just want to go in, kill the political leadership, take some prisoners, and leave. And so what they did is they started to organize the operation right out in the public, right out in the open, so that the Jordanians who were, had spotters and stuff could see that the Israelis were amassing militarily on the other side of the line, ready to do something. And in fact, the American ambassador at the time was sent a message to Hussein and said, look, this is what the Israelis are up to. They want you to stay back. Don't get involved. This is an Israeli-Palestinian thing. This has nothing to do with you. So what happened is a couple of officers in the Jordanian army, they transmitted all that information down to the Palestinian leadership, who couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't get back in. They couldn't go into Israel. They couldn't leave Jordan. So they decided to fight. And so they sent as many of the civilians away as they could, and they began to gun up. And when the Israelis did come into the camps, the Palestinians were more or less ready for them, and it was a real shootout. And depending, you can read the accounts. There's a couple of really well done and sort of unbiased accounts of the casualties. Palestinians, a couple of hundred died, but the Israelis lost 67 soldiers dead, a couple of hundred wounded. They lost a couple of tanks. They even lost a helicopter. So at the end of the day, the town was ruined. The town was completely ruined. The camp was leveled. There were actually two battles that took place. The whole area got shot up. But at the end of the day, Arafat and Abu Jihad and all these were still alive and in control of the battlefield, and the Israelis were going back across the line. So the Israelis claimed victory, and so did the Palestinians. And coming in the wake of the enormous defeat of the 1967 war, all through the Arab world, the Battle of AlKharama reinvigorated Arab pride. It reinvigorated a sense of Palestinian nationalism, almost in a sense of utopia. And in that moment, in the moment created by the outcome of the Battle of AlKharama, the Palestinians organized their first international political communications office called Unified Information. And all of their posters, you'll see on the bottom of almost every one done by Fatah or any of the PLO groups, it has the letters Mim, Taf, Fa, Munazzamat Tahrir al-Falastiniya. Mim, Taf, Fa, Ilan al-Muwahid, Unified Information. And so coming out of that, you could say that the Battle of AlKharama, whereas the first Zionist Congress was the impetus and the birthplace of the early Zionist Palestine poster, the outcome of the Battle of AlKharama in 1968 was the birthplace of the contemporary Palestinian nationalist version of the Palestine poster. And there are many parallels and similarities. There's also a lot of differences between the two. But the thing that is common to them is that they almost all have the word Palestine printed on them. They're all talking about the same place. And when seen together from 1897 up to the present, they tell what I consider to be the only uncompromised history on the contemporary Palestinian Zionist conflict. It's the only source you can go to. You can't go to film, you can't go to books, you can't go to poetry, you can't go to lectures, you can't go to any of the other media to get there. You have to patch it together. Whereas the posters tell the whole thing, taking together the Zionist contribution as well as the Palestinian contribution, including posters done by Arab Muslim artists and the international artists. Did you have a question?
No, I thought we might open it up generally.
Yes, please.
Because I think maybe you clearly have to come back. I mean, there's a.
Well, there's only 4,000.
But let's see. Maybe we have some ideas out here in the crowd.
Sure, and I'll run the slideshow in the background. And I'll leave it open here. If anybody wants me to go to a specific poster or specific Wellspring artist, I can do that.
Wellspring, you might say, is your term for the source of the four main sources of the posters.
Yes.
It's your own concept.
Yeah, they are.
Right. But the Wellspring notion itself is your term.
Yes, yes.
But why don't you run that slideshow for us? I think that's a good idea. Let's have some questions. I mean, these are incredible resources to be used, but that we already heard some comments that indicate how complex they are and how contested potentially any interpretation of them or use of them might be. You speak of them as uncompromised, but as soon as you begin to make use of them.
I'm not saying the posters themselves might not, like the Visit Palestine. David Tartaka considers that to be very compromised. He considers the contemporary Palestinian nationalists use and interpretation of that poster to be completely at odds with the original intent. But I'm saying that so I'm not saying individual posters aren't, I'm saying that the history, the arc of history is not compromised. It's all there.
All the posters are there.
Well, all the posters there, and also the section between 1898 and 1897 and 1948 is there, which is not in the history books.
So one of the contributions, aside from the massive collection and the largest collection, is that it doesn't cut out sections. It tries to incorporate all the posters that occurred in that area.
That's exactly, and all the history that the posters embody. Yes,
well,
that's
but
right.
the history, I think, already you were hearing from this man who left, that history might be argued.
Well, I hope it is argued. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of this, is to get people arguing about it.
Right. Good. Comments?
So there are two thoughts. The history that Hassan was speaking about is the history of Palestinians inside Israel. There's a whole chunk of a period from 1948 to 1967 in which what you can call autonomous, grassroots, not only that, but also political party posters were issued mainly by the Communist Party. So a lot of the 1958 event, there'd be a counter, there was a huge demonstration in Nazareth in 1958, protesting Israeli.
Can you speak up just a little bit?
Protesting Israeli confiscation of land, Israeli colonial policies internally, etc. It would be interesting to complement the range of posters you have from Israel internally, from sources from the Communist Party. I can hook you up with some people actually.
I would.
So you can have a sense of how the Palestinians themselves made posters about that period of military rule inside Israel, from 48 to 67. The other period which seems relevant, the other issue which seems relevant is there are a lot of posters, again, in that period before the rise of the Palestinian national struggle by different various Arab nationalist movements. Do you have access to those, or do you know about those?
Can you give me Arab nationalist movements? I mean, within Israel?
No, outside, in the Arab world, for example, the Nasserite movement from Egypt.
I do. I have a couple of Nasserite posters, Pan-Arabic posters, but they don't specifically relate to Palestine.
Huh.
And this is a website about Palestine.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Now I do have. I mean, like if an artist or a publisher, say from the Pan-Arab movement, okay, does a Palestine poster, and I have a Palestine poster establishing their special collection, then I can add posters that show related issues and other work to do. But if they don't have a Palestine, sort of the entry price here is to publish a Palestine poster. Publish a poster with the word Palestine. Once you've done that, if you've also, if you're an artist and like David Tartakova, if you've done posters, done that, and you've also done posters promoting, bubble gum or commercial products, I can put some of those in there as well. But I can't do it if you don't have a Palestine poster. And I'd like very much to talk to you about the links you have and the ideas. It would be great.
So the Communist Party would have posters of its own.
Sure. We have posters.
And they're obviously about Palestine, but they don't mention the word.
Well, I'm going to go
Is
to.
that
Probably not. Probably not the word.
So that sounds like, Dan, I think it sounds like if Palestinians are the producers, say in the Communist Party, of posters, sort of daily posters or weekly posters or whatever, those two should be part of the collection.
Absolutely, absolutely. Here's an example. Here's a special collection by Kamal Al-Mulani. And he worked between, all these works here, basically 76 to 86. And so these were done in the occupied territories during, under Israeli occupation. And if you look at them, they're very muted. They're very different from the posters that are done by Palestinians outside of Palestine. There's no gun. There's the allusions to guns, but they're couched in religious and Quranic phrases. The palette, even the palette, because there was the infamous Israeli Regulation 101. I read about it at the website, where it was against the law for Palestinians to replicate the Palestinian national colors. Black, red, white, and green. They couldn't do it. So the artists had to submerge that, in fuzzy greens and black on the outline. So they were basically being as nationalistic as they could be without directly going to jail. So this is an example of how Palestinian revolutionary posters look under occupation. and what came out of it. This very completely different iconography and a completely different palette. Did you have a question?
Could you show us some of those posters full screen?
These here, sure. Is there a particular one you want to look at?
The 8 on the bottom.
There.
Yeah, those 2 lines were.
Okay. Well, let's open this one here. I think I'm hitting this correctly. There it is.
I glimpse it with its full.
So, you know, the chains, it's an iconic symbol for imprisonment. You got a couple of battles. This is actually a pretty militant one. The clenched fist is a symbol for Samud, Palestinian, their notion of steadfastness and resistance. These little helmet-like houses are a feature of this particular artist's work. The flower represents reblossoming, a continuation of determination to reblossom. You get the outline of Palestine here. You get the rough outline of Palestine. You know, Gaza would be right here, and this is the Sinai. This one here, continuity. Like, continuity is the title, so you wouldn't have like, you know, in this particular publisher, Ibn Rushd, this particular artist who was arrested a lot of times, you're not going to get anything like, you know, revolution until victory, whatever. These works were they're small posters. These are about maybe 17 by maybe 14 by 20, something like that. And these were sold in sets, and they were sold by a publisher called Ibn Rushd, who's now out of business. And they were meant to be able to allow the artist to deny that they were militant or that they were anti-Israeli or that they were nationalistic. But
Maybe show us another one from the same period.
sure. By the same artist?
Yeah. There were ones in the same line.
I don't know how to go back on this thing. There's content. Oh wait, here you go.
The arrow all the way to the left.
Yeah, but the arrow keeps going away on me. Okay, let's try that. Okay. So, let's do this one here, which confused me for a long time. This is the anniversary of a massacre. The anniversary of the massacre at can you see Dawamiya? Which I haven't been able to find any actual reference to. Oh, is that true? Maybe somebody did find one. Yeah, we did find one. Okay, we did find one. Okay. So here's a you know, the iconography to me is very disturbing and it's very psychological. Tatriz is the designs here is it's from what's called a Kabba from the Palestine Burmese, and basically represents this artist's effort to commemorate the loss of life at the Battle of Dawamiya, which was one of the, if I remember this correctly, was one of the villages that were depopulated by the Israelis in the 1948 war. And many of the something like 400 villages, and many of them have commemorative posters. Deir Yassin, Dawamiya is another one, and in fact, Deir Yassin actually has its own special collection. So the loss, Dr. Rochelle Davis was here a couple of weeks ago, talked about the disappeared and depopulated villages. There's actually literature. There's actually literature associated with the lost villages, or these village memory books, where the surviving villages put posters and maps and postcards and letters from the village to prove that there was a village. And this poster is sort of in that tradition. Yeah, many of these posters are commemorative. Every year, I should go to that. Let me try that. Every year, the Israeli government and the PLO publish. Let's see. That's what we call Israel Independence Day. This is like a really big collection. It's 54 and grows all the time. I only have every year, beginning in 1949. This is the first Israeli Independence Day poster. Designed by a guy named Otto Walsh, who was one of the great early Zionist graphic designers. Every year, both the Israeli government and the PLO publish anniversary posters celebrating just the fact of having survived another year. I mean, that's the subtext for the Israeli and Palestinian anniversary posters. And they started out only being done by the governments, or in the case of the Palestinian, by the PLO. But now individual artists and companies and El Al Airlines and the Palestine Authority and the Palestinian schools. Everybody does, and everybody can, and more people do, produce anniversary posters, self-publish. So it's no longer a genre that's dominated by government-produced posters. Some of these are very, I think, very educational. This one tells an entire story, and I have the translation down below, all the Hebrew down below, but it's basically a compendium of Israeli and Zionist symbolology, and it tells a story about what was important to the artist and to the publisher of this poster, who was, let me see, was this, this is the World Zionist Organization. Okay, this is the World Zionist Organization, 1968. So, and these are very collectible. The Israeli Independence Day posters are a very hot eBay item. I don't think they were done in large numbers, and only a handful of people thought to collect them, and so there aren't a great many of them around. Is there something someone else wants to see?
What's the most recent one you have?
The most what?
The most recent.
The most recent one. Okay, let's go back to that.
Of this category?
Of Israeli independence poster? Well, was this one here, which 150 years since the birth of Herzl, 62 years. So what year was that? 2010. Okay. I don't have a very good JPEG of this. This is something I got, I think, off eBay. I don't actually have that poster. And this is part of a series. I think there were 8 or 10 posters in this series that, when put on the wall, tell a story. And let's go to this one here. We'll go to Feta. And we'll look at some of the Palestinian. But I'm going to actually scroll down to one. I hope, and right here. This here is considered a. This is a poster that was done by a woman who is now like a really famous. That's another thing. Many of the artists, as you go through here, you find artists who started out, they were 17, 18, 19 years old in 1972, and now they're like really famous, like Claude Lazare in Paris, and there's posters in there by Peter Paul Pash, and people who in their own worlds are accomplished and famous, maybe only within Sweden or only within England. But a great many artists who, as young college students, did works, have gone on to have spectacular careers. And interestingly, her name is no longer, she's remarried. Her name was Elisabetta Carboni. She did, I think, 7 posters for the General Union of Palestinian Students back in the early 1970s. She's now like Italy's leading theatrical garment. There's a name for that. People who make costumes, period piece costumes. She's like really famous, and she answers my emails nicely. This is a poster that celebrates the 7th anniversary of the first armed action of Al-Asifa, which means the storm, which is the armed faction, the armed element of Fatah. So they were celebrating the first military action that Fatah ever took, which was against this obscure, which was up in this little town called Ayalban, up in the Galilee, against a water treatment plant, or actually water pumping station. And this poster, one of the things you can do with this phenomenal resource called Drupal, this poster, she took this from this image. She had a copy of this image, which is by Nabil Naba, okay, and basically rendered a full-color silk screen, more sophisticated version of the same poster. And you can, oftentimes the same image will go through 5, 10, 12 iterations from artists around the world. I'll show you, is anybody interested in seeing that? Okay, I'll go through an iteration for Kemal Bulata. I'll show how artists, Kemal Bulata. Because there's no notion of copyrights. There's no notion of copyrights within the. I mean, a handful of American artists. Kemal Kaba. I gotta go back. Okay. Oh wait, sorry. There's very little copyright infringement. The notion of copyright infringement taking place in any of this. Although if you wanted to, if you want to get Israeli posters or Zionist posters, it's oftentimes a challenge. If you go into AIPAC or you go to any of the Zionist organizations in this country, even in Israel, and you ask for posters, or you say you want to have posters, it's generally an interrogation that follows. You get a lot of questions: who's going to see this poster? Where's it going to go? Why do you want this? You got to get vetted and stuff like that. And generally, I leave with no posters, but I try, because by getting a copy of the poster, I try to get 3 copies of everything. I put one in the Georgetown University library, one in the Palestine Poster Archives collection, and one I keep for places like maybe Columbia for third parties, because saving the original copies is really important. If you go into any Palestinian, if you're traveling around, you're in Sweden, or you're in Chile, or you're anywhere, and you go to a Palestinian embassy or a Palestinian culture group and you ask for posters, you walk out with, like, they give you, you want 3 copies, they'll give you 500 copies, they'll give everything. So there's a very different notion, even today, of what the poster's purpose is, and whether or not the particular agency or ideology that you're working with is practicing what's called a broadcast dissemination system or a narrowcast dissemination system, where the works are only narrowcast and temporarily cast, and the message is much more controlled. Let me go to Kamal Bulata here, and we'll look at how iterations work across a graphic. Bulata, right here, Kamal Bulata. Okay, so here's a poster that So here's a poster called Revolution Until Victory. And this was done circa 1969. Now if you click on this one here, called Palestine, you see it's the same imagery, the exact same imagery has been lifted off of this poster. This is the earliest one. This, I believe, is 60. Well, this is 69, but it's by Nabil Nada. So it came from Al-Asifa, because that's the logo up there. Okay, so this was the first one. Then the poster we just saw, Kamal, who lived in this country and worked in this country, he lifted it, did another poster, and then a really famous or infamous, depending upon your work, was the poster publisher Pro Arts, which was out of small town, I can't think of the name of it, where Kent University is in Ohio. These guys started to produce posters on all kinds of issues, and they lifted it. This is an American silkscreen poster, a commercial mass distributor. They lifted it and published it in a poster that they sold for 5 or 10 years. So that's an example of how an icon moves across cultures and across time. And the poster we spoke about earlier, Visit Palestine, has even been altered. It's not yet done, but here's that famous poster by. Oh no, that's not going to work. I have to go back. Like this arrow over here. Like here, if you can see this here, that's the poster we looked at before. I could have brought it up, and with, it said Visit Palestine, and it had the city, and we talked about whether there were trees in it. And this artist has just taken and run a section of the Israeli barrier / apartheid wall across it to make his statement about the ability to visit Palestine. So it's an example of how our icons really never die. Any questions?
Let's see if there are any more questions.
Okay.
Here's one.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk for a second about the martyr posters in the West Bank and in Gaza.
Martyrdom posters, yeah.
And if this is something you're
well, it's a special collection. It has to be in there. I mean, it's something that exists. I'll tell you how I handle that. There's actually a guy in Gaza who has taken it upon himself. There's a YouTube video about this, and he goes to every single funeral, and he hangs out at the poster shops, because one of the things that's happened is that with digitization, you can have posters that were done in Brazil, printed in France for a solidarity rally in Spain. So there's really, you used to have to have the artist, the printer, the paper, everything in one room or one town. It's not that way anymore. I'm trying to get this to open to special collections, and we'll go to Martyrs. and martyrdom posters. And what he does is he goes to every single funeral, and he collects the posters of the martyrs. Martyr. Okay, so the 109 posters in here. So now the first 3 posters in this are Israelis. The Forest of Martyred Children, so they'll never get them martyred. Oh, there's actually 2 of them there. Oh, they're 2 separate versions of the same poster. So both Israelis and Palestinians, have martyrdom posters. And I don't, it's impossible for me to be ever able to get a poster that maybe the family only printed 10 copies, and it's just a picture of a guy holding a gun or a casket or something. So it's very funereal. It's generally a pictorial. It's generally a photographic genre. It's not really a graphic genre. No artist was involved, and they just done in 2 small numbers. The family might print 4 copies or something to give to the family. So they do exist. The contemporary Hamas suicide bomber funereal martyr poster. But there's also a longer history of that, and many of them are works of art, and many of them were done by famous artists, and do tell a story. I mean, my standard for including a poster in the martyrdom special collection is, does it have the word martyr in any language on the poster? So, I mean, you can't just say this guy, somebody can't say, well, I consider him a martyr. The poster has to say martyr in order for me to put it in there. And this is a small sample. I probably have another 100 posters, most of which were published by organizations, not families, okay? And most of which come from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Do you mind opening the Qassam one?
This one right here?
No, just above it.
Just
yeah.
above.
Martyrdom of the Fighter, 76. This one.
This one right here?
Wow.
What did you want to know about that one?
I was just curious.
It is curious, or you're curious?
No, it's just the design. The issue is the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, right?
Yeah.
And Azzeddin Qassam usually, and now in the 30s, of course, was an Islamist figure. He was the head of. He was martyred just before the revolt.
Well, there are Islamist factions that run through almost every Palestinian and every Arab political organization. It's not specific. I mean, we think of it as specific to Hamas or having come about recently because of the way the media covers it, but that's not the case. I mean, he's a hero to Palestinians who are not even religious. Not because he was religious, but because he resisted Israel. He resisted Zionism.
Other questions?
Have you seen sort of a trend or a shift in some of the international solidarity in terms of just how solidarity is conceptualized through the posters?
I have seen a shift, and it's really interesting, and it's a great question, and I'm going to try to answer that by going to a special collection called Contests. And if I have that up here, that's going to be, what's the name of that foundation? Okay, let me answer that question this way. Let me do that in a two-way question. Let's go to Blue Star PR. Okay, Blue Star PR is the premier American based Israel advocacy poster publisher. So if you want to get posters that manifest solidarity with Israel, okay, then you go to Blue Star PR, and they can download these and you can buy them. And this is take a look at the iconography of this. You know, Ray Charles is in there, Native Americans. There's some really weird stuff. I mean, I totally don't get this poster at all. I mean, you know. I mean, this was considered a great Israel solidarity poster. If you could explain that to me, but it's on their website, and you know, and they have it. You can buy it. So so you can go in here. You get a very very specific. You get a very specific line of imagery. Here's another one by Blue Star, which I thought was pretty interesting, and I read it until I read which which is actually interesting, and this is a Penny Abu Asad. So it's a pro-Israeli poster publisher, Blue Star PR, featuring an Arab film director. And if you go to the website and you read the entire paragraph that this was taken from, there's a whole different context gets established. But I thought it was an interesting, effort, and I'm bringing this up as a way to answer your question that solidarity. There's two kinds of solidarity: solidarity to Palestine, solidarity to Israel. Solidarity to Israel contains now even contemporary images and text from Israeli Palestinian film producers, which is something that you never saw before. So I mean, that might be a good thing, it might be a bad thing. I don't know. I try not to have any answers. I try just to generate questions. So let's look at some of the latest. International solidarity work. We'll go here. We'll go back to 9. Here are some of the. Well, let's go here. This is probably, if there's one place that you were going to go to look at posters in international, well, two places. You'd have to go to OSPA, which is preeminent in terms of both the talent. These are the artists of OSPA who created all the great Che Guevara and Fidel Castro and heroic, romantic African, Asian, Latin American political iconography. And this is part of the genre. This is part of the special collection. I think there's 20 in here altogether, including this one, which is considered to be more or less the flagship poster of Palestine Solidarity, designed by Rafael Enrique, who was the foremost Cuban poster artist for OSPA. He was trained in America. He went to America under the regime of Batista. He went to the I think it was New School here in New York, and a couple of other fine educational institutions, learned design, and was sent back to Cuba to with the intention that he was going to design posters for the casino trade. He no sooner landed than the revolution happened, and he took all his skills and he turned them over to the revolution and created what I consider to be some of the finest examples of contemporary revolutionary poster art. And this is based on, I don't have it in here, but this is based on you can go to the Liberation Graphics website, I have it compared. This is based on a poster called Che, a famous poster called Che by the same artist. So again, the leading Cuban, the most famous, the most celebrated Cuban poster artist producing posters in solidarity with Palestine, carry that over the board to all the countries of Western Europe, most of the countries of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and it gives you a sense of the pedigree, the caliber of political poster art being done on Palestine today. Any last questions?
Dan, I would like to have a little time so that people can come up and ask you questions they may have.
Absolutely.
But the other thing is that you can consult these posters in the privacy of your own homes. Or
Yeah.
If you see anything you'd like, you can return, and etc. But this is a fantastic resource which we've only seen a very small beginning portion of. And again, the whole thing is not only on Dan's site, but it's also on the Columbia Center for Palestine Studies site. And this is a person you can interact with. You have questions, if you want to pursue topics you want to pursue. He's got the information, and he can put you on the trail of posters that might be relevant. And I think you can see that there are posters in some of the very recent questions about how posters may be depicting certain kind of new movements that are just emergent.
Let me close by coming back to your question about. For me, I've been at this for 30 years, and it's always been posters dribbling in or trying to get them or do swaps across the board. But now with the internet, it's like completely different. And here's an example. Let's see if I can find this. This would be here at Palestine Poster Project Archives Special Collection. I'm going to go to Michael Thompson. And here's a guy who literally does Palestine poster. He reads the newspaper and then goes into a studio and does a Palestine poster. So, I mean, and it sends it to me. Michael Thompson, okay? And he's got his own website. I don't put everything up here because I don't want people coming to my site to only see his. But, you know, this one here, the Mavi Marmara, he did this like within 24 hours of the boat being attacked. This was up and printable and downloadable as a PDF. And so, I mean, the turnaround time now for poster production, which used to be weeks or months or whatever, is now down to hours, even minutes. And you know, no Palestinian institution, nobody told this guy to do it, nobody paid him to do it, you know, he just read the newspaper, went into a studio and created a post. And there's probably 50 artists here in the United States who do the same thing.
There's a guy on BBC right now that's making a poster a day from headlines.
There's a guy on BBC who's making, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
A poster a day from headlines, so 365.
Oh, really? Oh, really? What's his name?
I'm not sure, but there's definitely one on Palestine.
Oh, okay. Oh, really? Oh, if you have that link, I'd love to have that. So that's an example of how if he does 365, and maybe one of them is about Palestine, the other 364 about environment, I could actually put all 365 up there because there is one about Palestine. Any other questions?
Join me in thanking Dan.
Thank you.